Princess Zarathel stood on the crystal balcony of the celestial spire, her silver eyes scanning the endless purple sky of Valorian Prime. The twin moons cast their ethereal glow across the floating cities, each one connected by shimmering energy bridges that pulsed with the rhythm of 1,000 beating hearts. At 19 cycles old, she was considered young for a Valari princess, but her mind held the wisdom of ages thanks to the neural downloading process her species had perfected millennia ago. Tonight was different. Tonight, the Council of Elders would gather to discuss the growing threat of the Drakari Empire, a ruthless collective of insectoid warriors who had already consumed 12 star systems. Their bioships grew stronger with each world they devoured, and their Queen Mother showed no signs of stopping her relentless expansion across the galaxy. Zarathel's attendant, a graceful Valari named Nixara, approached with careful steps. Her crystalline skin shimmered in the moonlight, and her elongated fingers carried a data pad containing the evening's intelligence reports. "Princess, the council awaits your presence," Nixara said, her voice like musical chimes. "The situation with the Drakari has grown more severe. They have taken the Meridian Cluster." The princess closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. The Meridian Cluster was home to billions of peaceful beings. Now they were either dead or transformed into mindless drones serving the Hive Queen. "Have the elders proposed any solutions?" Zarathel asked, though she already suspected the answer. "They speak of ancient legends again, Princess. The old stories about the Terran warriors." Zarathel couldn't help but smile, though there was no humor in it. For as long as she could remember, whenever her people faced insurmountable odds, someone would mention the mythical Terran warriors. These legendary beings were said to come from a distant world called Earth, possessed of incredible strength, unbreakable will, and a savage creativity in warfare that made them nearly invincible. According to the stories, Terran warriors could survive in environments that would kill most other species. They could endure pain that would drive others mad, adapt to any situation, and fight with a berserker rage that turned the tide of impossible battles. Some tales claimed they could even come back from the dead through sheer determination. But they were just stories. Myths created by desperate civilizations who needed to believe that somewhere in the vast universe, there existed beings capable of standing against ultimate evil. The Valari had collected these legends from dozens of species across the galaxy, each one adding their own details to the growing mythology. "The Terrans are children's tales," Zarathel said firmly as she walked through the corridor toward the council chamber. "We need real solutions, not fairy stories." The council chamber was a magnificent dome of living crystal that amplified thoughts and emotions, allowing the 12 elders to share their consciousness during important deliberations. Each elder sat on a floating throne that pulsed with their life energy, creating a symphony of colors that painted the walls in ever-shifting patterns. Elder Morgeth, the oldest and wisest among them, spoke first. His voice carried the weight of 10,000 years. "Princess Zarathel, we have exhausted all conventional options. Our fleet, even combined with our allies, cannot match the Drakari's bioships. Their adaptive armor learns from each attack, making them stronger." "What of the quantum destroyers?" the princess asked, referring to their most powerful weapons. "Used against their forward scouts with limited success," Elder Kyliana replied, her thoughts projecting images of space battles. "The Drakari Queen Mother has developed countermeasures. She learns faster than we can innovate." Elder Vortex leaned forward on his throne. "There is one option we have not yet pursued seriously. The archives speak of a species that once fought creatures similar to the Drakari and emerged victorious. The records are ancient and scattered, but they all point to the same origin world, Terra, third planet from a yellow star." Zarathel felt frustration building in her chest. "Respected elder, with all due honor, those are legends. Myths born from desperation. No single species could possess such capabilities." "Perhaps," Elder Morgeth said slowly, "but consider this, young princess. Every myth contains a seed of truth. What if the stories have been exaggerated over time, but the core reality remains? What if there truly exists a warrior species that could aid us?" The princess studied the faces of her advisors. These were beings who had guided her people for thousands of years, whose wisdom had saved countless lives. Yet now they grasped at ancient stories like drowning swimmers reaching for driftwood. "Even if such beings existed," Zarathel said carefully, "how would we find them? The galaxy is vast and Terra appears in no current star charts. Elder Kyliana's throne pulsed brighter. The archives contained fragments of an ancient navigation array. Incomplete, but perhaps enough to narrow the search to a few hundred star systems. We could dispatch scout ships, while the Drakari continue their advance. The princess shook her head. We would be wasting precious time and resources chasing shadows. What if we are not? Elder Vortex asked quietly. What if in our desperate hour we discover that the universe still holds heroes? The cost of searching pales compared to the cost of surrender. Silence filled the chamber as the elders contemplated their options. Through the crystal dome above, stars twinkled like distant diamonds, each one representing thousands of worlds that might soon fall to the Drakari swarm. Finally, Elder Morgoth spoke. Princess Zarathel, as heir to the throne, this decision falls to you. Do we marshal our remaining forces for a final stand, knowing we will likely fall? Or do we take a chance on ancient legends and search for beings who may not exist? The princess closed her eyes and reached out with her consciousness, touching the collective memory of her people. She felt their fear, their hope, their desperate need for salvation. When she opened her eyes again, her decision was made. Dispatch 3 scout ships to the most promising coordinates, she said firmly. But we will not rely on myths alone. Continue preparing our defenses and rallying our allies. If the Terran warriors prove to be real, we will be ready to meet them. If not, we will face the darkness with whatever strength we possess. The elders bowed their heads in acceptance, and the crystal chamber pulsed with renewed determination. None of them could have imagined that in the distant reaches of space, their call for help had already been heard by someone who would change everything they believed about the universe. 3 rotations after the council meeting, Princess Zarathel found herself aboard the scout vessel Star Whisper, personally leading the search mission despite fierce opposition from her advisors. She couldn't send others to chase what she believed were myths while remaining safely in her palace. If the Terran warriors were real, first contact would require royal authority. If they were legends, she would at least know for certain. The Star Whisper was a sleek exploration craft designed for long-range reconnaissance, equipped with the most advanced sensors in the Valeri fleet. Captain Nexala, a veteran explorer with scales that shimmered like captured starlight, maintained course toward the coordinates found in the ancient archives. Princess, we're approaching the target system, Nexala announced from the bridge. Sensors detect 1 inhabited world, 3rd planet from a Class G star. The electromagnetic signatures are unusual. Zarathel studied the sensor readings displayed on the central hologram. The planet below pulsed with energy patterns unlike anything in their databases. Artificial lights covered vast portions of the land masses in geometric patterns, suggesting a highly developed civilization. Radio waves and data transmissions filled the electromagnetic spectrum with chaotic but structured communications. Population estimates? She asked. Approximately 8 billion sentient beings, Princess. The technological level appears inconsistent. Some regions show advanced development while others seem more primitive. Most unusual. As they entered orbit, more details emerged. The beings called themselves humans, and their world was indeed named Earth just as the legend suggested. But these creatures didn't match the mythical descriptions of unstoppable warriors. They appeared remarkably fragile, with thin skin, minimal natural armor, and no visible bioweapons or enhanced physiology. They look so ordinary, murmured Kexen, the ship's xenobiologist. No enhanced musculature, no chitinous plating, no energy projection organs. How could these beings become legendary warriors? The princess felt vindication mixed with disappointment. They had found the homeworld from the legends, but its inhabitants seemed more suited to academic pursuits than warfare. Still, they had come this far. Open a communication channel. Let's introduce ourselves properly. Before Captain Nexala could comply, proximity alarms screamed throughout the ship. A massive object materialized from behind the planet's largest moon, a bioship of unmistakable Drakari design, its organic hull pulsing with malevolent life. But this wasn't just any Drakari vessel. Its size suggested it was a hive tender, capable of seeding entire worlds with transformation spores. How did they find us? Nexala demanded, but there was no time for answers. The bioship launched a swarm of smaller attack pods toward both the Star Whisper and the planet below. Evasive maneuvers, Zarathel commanded. Send a warning to the planet's surface. They need to know what's coming. The Star Whisper danced through space as acid projectiles and bioplasma bursts filled the void around them. Their quantum shields held, but barely. The Drakari ship was larger and more powerful than anything they had faced before. On the surface below, chaos erupted as the first attack pods struck major population centers. The princess watched in horror as alien creatures began emerging from the impact sites. But then something unprecedented happened. Instead of fleeing in panic, the humans began to fight back. At first it seemed hopeless. The Drakari warrior forms were 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor and armed with bioweapons that could melt steel. But the humans adapted with shocking speed. They coordinated their defense using their communication networks, sharing information about Drakari weaknesses in real time. Within minutes, human military forces arrived with projectile weapons that seemed primitive compared to Valeri technology, yet proved devastatingly effective against the organic invaders. The humans had somehow identified the neural cluster locations on Drakari warrior forms and were targeting them with precision that spoke to an intimate understanding of anatomy and tactics. "Princess," Keksun called out, his voice filled with amazement. "You need to see this." On the screen, a single human figure caught the princess's attention. He was fighting in what appeared to be a major city. Armed with nothing but a metal blade and some kind of projectile weapon, a Drakari warrior form, easily twice his size, lunged at him with razor-sharp claws. The human moved like flowing water, sliding beneath the alien's attack, while simultaneously driving his blade into the creature's neural cluster. As the warrior form collapsed, the human was already spinning toward another enemy, his movements fluid and precise despite the chaos around him. "Zoom in on that individual," Zarathel commanded, her heart racing. The enhanced view revealed details that defied everything she thought she knew about biology and physics. The human's eyes held a cold fire that spoke of intelligence and determination beyond measure. His wounds, several claw marks across his torso, were bleeding freely, yet he showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, the injury seemed to make him more dangerous. As they watched, 3 Drakari warrior forms cornered the human against a collapsed building. By all logic, he should have been overwhelmed. Instead, he smiled, actually smiled, and pulled something from his belt. A small explosive device. The princess watched in stunned silence as the human detonated the explosive at close range, using his own body to shield fleeing civilians while absorbing most of the blast himself. When the smoke cleared, all 3 Drakari lay dead and the human was still standing, burned and bloodied but somehow functional. "That's impossible," Keksun whispered. "That explosion should have killed him." But the human wasn't finished. As more Drakari reinforcements arrived, he began moving through them like a force of nature. His tactics were unlike anything in Valeri military doctrine, creative, adaptive, and seemingly unconcerned with personal safety. He used the environment itself as a weapon, bringing down structural supports to crush enemies, igniting fuel lines to create walls of fire, even turning the Drakari's own bioacid against them. He's not just fighting them, Zarathel realized with growing wonder. He's enjoying it. The battle raged for hours, and gradually, impossibly, the humans began to win. Not just in the city where they'd been watching, but across the entire planet. Reports flooded in from every continent showing similar scenes. Humans standing against creatures that had conquered entire star systems, and emerging victorious through pure tenacity and frightening adaptability. When the last Drakari warrior form fell, the attack pods attempted to retreat to their mothership, but the humans had already adapted to that tactic. Primitive rockets launched from the surface carried nuclear warheads that turned the escape pods into brief stars in the night sky. The hive tender itself, seeing its invasion force annihilated, attempted to withdraw to hyperspace. That's when the human fleet appeared. They had been hiding in the outer system, sleek ships that registered as barely functional on Valeri sensors, but which moved with predatory grace toward the bioship. The Drakari vessel, confident in its superiority, launched its remaining bioweapons. The humans didn't try to match the alien technology. Instead, they did something that made Zarathel's heart skip a beat. They rammed the bioship. Not one vessel, but dozens of them, each one piloted by humans who chose death over retreat. Their ships tore into the Drakari hull like bullets through flesh, and secondary explosions rippled across the organic armor as the bioship's own systems turned against it. In the space of 6 hours, these supposedly mythical warriors had not only survived a Drakari assault, but had completely destroyed a hive tender, that could have conquered most civilizations. As the debris cloud expanded in Earth's orbit, Princess Zarathel stared at the tactical displays with a mixture of terror and awe. These weren't the civilized, reasonable beings she had expected to find. These were creatures of pure determination and controlled violence, beings who would rather die fighting than live in submission. The myths hadn't exaggerated. If anything, they had been too conservative. A communication request appeared on their console originating from the planet's surface. The same human they had been watching, somehow still alive despite his injuries, was requesting contact. "Princess," Captain Nexala said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zarathel stared at the communication request for a long moment, knowing that her next decision would change the fate of her people forever. "Accept the transmission," she said finally. "It's time to meet a Terran warrior." The face that appeared on the communication screen belonged to the human warrior Princess Zarathel had watched fight with impossible tenacity. Up close she could see details that made her breath catch in her throat. His eyes were the color of Earth's oceans, but they held depth that spoke of experiences beyond his apparent age. 3 parallel scars ran across his left cheek, fresh from the battle, and dried blood marked his temple. Yet he sat perfectly still, his breathing controlled despite what must have been significant injuries. "This is Colonel Marcus Kane, Earth Defense Force," he said, his voice steady and measured. "I'm speaking to the vessel that witnessed our engagement with the hostile biologics. Identify yourselves." Princess Zarathel found herself momentarily speechless. The directness of his communication was unlike any diplomatic protocol she had studied. No flowery greetings, no elaborate titles, just simple efficiency. "I am Princess Zarathel of the Valari Confederation," she managed. "We came seeking aid against the Drakari Empire. We thought your people were legend." Something flickered in the human's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement. "The Drakari, so that's what they call themselves." He leaned forward slightly and she noticed his hands remained perfectly steady, despite the adrenaline that should still be coursing through his system. "Your Highness, with respect, you picked a hell of a time to make first contact. What's your tactical situation?" The casual way he switched from formal address to military assessment made her head spin. "Our homeworld is 3 days from Drakari conquest. Our fleets have been scattered, our allies fallen. We have perhaps 72 hours before total defeat." Colonel Kane was quiet for a moment, and she could almost see his mind working behind those ocean blue eyes. "How many ships do you have with you?" "Just this scout vessel, Colonel. We came seeking mythical warriors, not expecting to find a real war." "Copy that." He looked off screen for a moment, apparently speaking to someone outside the communication range. When his attention returned to her, his expression had changed subtly. The weariness was still there, but now she detected something else, a predatory anticipation that made her pulse quicken. "Princess, I'm going to patch you through to someone with higher authority than mine. But first I need to know, are you willing to do whatever it takes to save your people?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean fighting dirty. I mean accepting help that comes with strings attached. I mean making decisions that might cost you everything, including your crown if it means your species survives." His voice carried a weight that suggested he had faced similar choices himself. The universe isn't kind to the weak or the naive. If you want to win against something like the Drakari, you have to become something they don't expect. Zarathel thought of her people, of the billions of lives hanging in the balance, of the elders who had trusted her judgment. "Yes," she said quietly. "Whatever it takes." Colonel Kane nodded once sharply. "Good, stand by." The transmission switched to another location, and suddenly the princess found herself looking at a spacious command center filled with humans working at various stations. At the center sat a woman whose presence commanded immediate attention. She was older than Kane, perhaps in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and scars that spoke of personal combat experience. Her uniform bore insignia that Zarathel didn't recognize, but the authority in her bearing was unmistakable. "Princess Zarathel," the woman said, her voice carrying the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of making impossible decisions. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding the Seoul Defense Fleet. Colonel Kane briefed me on your situation during transmission lag. I have a proposition for you." "Admiral, I'm listening." 3 days isn't enough time to mount a conventional defense of your homeworld, but humans don't fight conventionally. We've been tracking Drakari movements for the past 18 months, learning their patterns, their weaknesses, their psychology. We know how to hurt them." The Admiral gestured, and the screen split to show tactical displays that made Zarathel gasp. Star charts detailed Drakari fleet movements across dozens of systems, showing a level of intelligence gathering that rivaled her own military's capabilities. "You've been studying them for 18 months?" she asked. "But this was your first contact with them." Admiral Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. "Princess, just because we haven't made formal contact doesn't mean we haven't been watching. Humanity learned long ago that the universe contains threats we needed to prepare for. We've been tracking the Drakari expansion since they took the Kepler system. We knew they'd reach us eventually. Then why didn't you warn anyone? Why didn't you help the other civilizations they conquered?" The Admiral's expression grew somber. "Because we needed to learn. Every species they fought, we studied their tactics. Every world they took, we analyzed their methods. Every victory they achieved taught us something about how to defeat them. It's a cold calculation, but it's kept humanity alive and given us the tools to end this threat permanently." The casual admission sent chills down Zarathel's spine. These humans had watched entire civilizations fall, using each tragedy as a learning experience. The strategic coldness of it was terrifying, but she couldn't deny the logic. "What's your proposition, Admiral?" "Joint operation. Your knowledge of Drakari fleet positions combined with human tactics and firepower. We help you save your homeworld. And in return, you help us eliminate the Drakari threat once and for all. What kind of help would you need from us?" Admiral Chen's eyes glinted. "Access to their bioships. We need live specimens of their technology for analysis. We need navigational data to their primary breeding worlds. And we need someone who can get us close enough to their Queen Mother to end this war permanently." The magnitude of what the Admiral was suggesting began to dawn on her. "You're not just talking about saving Valorian Prime, you want to destroy their entire empire." "Correct. Half measures don't work against a species like the Drakari. They adapt, they evolve, they come back stronger. The only way to protect the galaxy is complete eradication of their military capability and elimination of their leadership structure." Princess Zarathel found herself faced with a choice that would define not just her own future, but the future of every species in the galaxy. The humans were offering salvation, but at the cost of participating in what amounted to genocide against the Drakari. "How many humans would be involved in this operation?" she asked. "Initially, a single ship with a crew of 200, Admiral Chen replied. "If the mission parameters expand, we can commit additional resources." 200 humans against an empire that spans dozens of star systems? Colonel Kane reappeared on screen beside the Admiral. "Princess, you just watched 12 humans clear a city of Drakari warrior forms in 6 hours. You watched our defensive fleet destroy a hive tender with ships you probably thought were obsolete. The question isn't whether we can do it. The question is whether you're prepared for what victory will look like." His words carried an implication that made her stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "I mean that when this is over, humanity will be the strongest military power in the galaxy. Your allies will fear us as much as they respect us. Your enemies will know that crossing any of our friends means facing something worse than death. The balance of power will shift permanently." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "We're not conquerors, Princess. We have no interest in ruling other species. But we won't allow threats like the Drakari to exist either. When we're done, the galaxy will be safer. But it will also know exactly what happens to anyone who tries to repeat the Drakari's mistakes." The communication channel fell silent as Zarathel processed the implications. The humans weren't just offering to save her people. They were offering to reshape the galactic order itself. The mythical warriors she had sought were real, but they came with consequences no legend had prepared her for. Looking at their faces on the screen, she realized she was staring at beings who had turned warfare into an art form, who calculated genocide as casually as others planned dinner parties, and who possessed the power to make good on any threat they made. The choice before her was simple: watch her people die with their honor intact, or unleash something upon the galaxy that might never be contained. "What do you need me to do?" she asked quietly. Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time since the conversation began, Zarathel saw genuine warmth in her expression. "First, we need you to contact your fleet and tell them to fall back to rally point coordinates we'll provide. Then we're going to show you what human tactics look like when we're not holding back." 6 hours later, Princess Zarathel found herself aboard the human vessel Prometheus, a ship that defied every principle of spacecraft design she had ever learned. Where Valari ships were elegant curves of crystal and energy, the Prometheus was angular, brutal, and covered in weapon systems that seemed to have been added as afterthoughts. It looked like something designed by beings who expected every journey to end in combat. Colonel Kane had personally escorted her from the transport bay, and now she walked beside him through corridors that hummed with barely contained energy. The crew they passed moved with purposeful efficiency, each one nodding respectfully to their princess but showing no curiosity about her alien appearance. Their discipline was absolute, their focus unshakable. Your people adapt quickly to new situations, she observed. We've had to, Kane replied, leading her into what appeared to be a briefing room. Earth isn't the peaceful world you probably imagined during first contact. The briefing room contained a holographic display that currently showed a detailed map of the galaxy, with red markers indicating Drakari-controlled systems and blue markers showing the positions of various alien fleets. The scope of the invasion was staggering. The Drakari controlled nearly a quarter of known space. Admiral Chen stood at the head of the table, speaking quietly with a group of human officers. When she noticed their arrival, she gestured for everyone to take seats around the central display. Princess, before we begin tactical planning, you need to understand how humanity developed the capabilities you witnessed. Admiral Chen began. It might help explain why we fight the way we do. The holographic display shifted to show Earth's solar system, then zoomed in on the blue-green world that had produced such terrifying warriors. Humanity evolved on a death world, Princess. Gravity 20% higher than galactic standard, an atmosphere that's barely breathable to most species, and a biosphere filled with predators that shaped us into what we are today. Images flashed across the display. Massive predatory cats, enormous bears, creatures from Earth's oceans that dwarfed most spacefaring vessels. Every human alive is descended from survivors. We competed with predators that outweighed us 10 to 1. We survived ice ages that wiped out most other life on our planet. We learned to work together against threats that should have made us extinct. Princess Zarathel studied the images with growing understanding. Your entire species is essentially a warrior caste. More than that, Colonel Kane interjected. We're survivors who learned to become predators ourselves. When we developed technology, we didn't use it to make life easier. We used it to become better at surviving. Every human invention, from fire to nuclear weapons, started as a tool for staying alive in a hostile environment. Admiral Chen nodded. When we reached space, we discovered that the rest of the galaxy was relatively peaceful. Most species developed on worlds that were stable, safe, predictable. They created technologies to explore and understand. We created technologies to fight and survive. The display shifted again, showing what appeared to be historical records from humanity's early space expansion. We made contact with 17 different species before we encountered the Drakari. Every one of them tried to classify us as either primitive warmongers or potential threats. None of them understood that warfare wasn't our nature, it was our survival mechanism. That's why the legends developed, Zarathel realized. Other species encountered humans during conflicts. Exactly. Every time a civilization met humans, it was because they were facing something they couldn't handle alone. Pirates, slavers, environmental disasters, plagues. We kept showing up whenever things got desperate, because those were the only situations where other species would accept help from beings they considered dangerous. The Admiral pulled up a star chart showing human exploration routes. We've been quietly establishing listening posts and observation stations throughout the galaxy for the past century, not to spy on peaceful civilizations, but to watch for threats that might require intervention. The Drakari were exactly what we'd been preparing for. Which brings us to the current situation, Kane added, gesturing as the display returned to real-time tactical data. Your fleet is rallying at coordinates we provided, roughly 2 days' travel from Valorian Prime. The Drakari main force will reach your homeworld in approximately 60 hours. We have a narrow window to implement our strategy. Princess Zarathel leaned forward, studying the tactical display. What's the plan? Admiral Chen smiled, and once again the princess felt that mixture of terror and anticipation. We're going to use the oldest human military strategy in existence. We're going to make them chase us into a trap. The Hologram zoomed in on a star, system roughly halfway between the human Rally Point and Valorian Prime. The system contained a massive nebula that interfered with most scanning technologies. This is the Meridian Nebula, the Admiral explained. Dense enough to hide fleet movements, unstable enough to disrupt their bioship's navigation systems. We're going to make them think your remaining forces are hiding there, desperate and cornered. But they're not, Zarathel said, beginning to understand. No, your ships will be positioned here. Kane pointed to a position just outside the nebula's edge. When the Drakari fleet enters the nebula to finish you off, they'll find something else entirely. The display showed what appeared to be a massive human fleet positioned throughout the nebula, hundreds of ships arranged in a complex three-dimensional formation. But as the princess studied the tactical data more closely, she realized something was wrong with the numbers. Those ships, they're too small to carry significant weaponry, she observed. Because they're not warships, Admiral Chen confirmed. They're cargo vessels, mining equipment, and construction ships. Every human civilian craft within 3 star systems retrofitted with the same thing. Which is? Colonel Kane's smile was purely predatory. Nuclear weapons. Lots and lots of nuclear weapons. The implications hit her like a physical blow. You're going to turn civilian ships into suicide bombers. We prefer the term tactical sacrificial units, Admiral Chen said calmly. Each ship contains between 50 and 200 nuclear warheads, along with a volunteer crew of exactly 1 person. When the Drakari bioships enter the nebula, they'll be surrounded by what they think are helpless civilian vessels. The Drakari ignore civilian targets, Kane explained. They consider them unworthy of attention until after military threats are eliminated. It's a psychological weakness we've identified in their tactical doctrine. They'll focus entirely on hunting for your military vessels, while civilian ships maneuver into position around them. Zarathel felt her stomach drop. The volunteers piloting those ships will die gloriously, Admiral Chen said without emotion. Every one of them volunteered, knowing exactly what the mission entailed. They consider it an honor to strike the first blow against a threat to galactic peace. The casual way the humans discussed mass suicide. Attacks made the princess question everything she thought she knew about heroism and warfare. These beings had planned the deaths of hundreds of their own people as casually as she might plan a diplomatic dinner. What about the bioship's defenses? Their adaptive armor? Nuclear weapons don't rely on conventional physics, Kane replied. The armor can adapt to energy weapons and projectiles, but it can't adapt to having its molecular structure vaporized in a fusion explosion. We tested this theory on the hive tender that attacked Earth. The armor failed completely. The display shifted to show the expected results of the operation. Conservative estimates suggested the destruction of 60% of the Drakari fleet in the initial attack, with the remainder scattered and disoriented. After the nuclear phase, your fleet and our support vessels move in to eliminate survivors, Admiral Chen continued. But the real prize comes next. Intelligence suggests that the Drakari Queen Mother travels with her main fleet. If our analysis is correct, she'll be aboard one of the larger bioships in the formation. You want to capture her, Zarathel breathed. Alive if possible, dead if necessary, Kane confirmed. With their leadership eliminated and their main fleet destroyed, the remaining Drakari forces will fall into chaos. Scattered remnants can be hunted down over time, but the immediate threat to the galaxy ends with this operation. Princess Zarathel stared at the tactical display, watching simulation after simulation play out. The plan was brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely terrifying in its scope. These humans had crafted a strategy that would save her people and eliminate the Drakari threat. But it required a level of sacrifice and cold calculation that made her question whether the cure might be worse than the disease. Admiral, she said quietly, what happens after the Drakari are gone? What happens to the galaxy when everyone knows what humans are capable of? Admiral Chen's expression grew thoughtful. That depends on how we choose to use the fear and respect we'll have earned. We could become conquerors, ruling through intimidation. We could withdraw from galactic affairs, leaving everyone to wonder when we might return. Or we could do something else entirely. What would you prefer? We'd prefer to go home and work on our own projects, Kane said simply. But the galaxy will know we exist now. Some species will try to make friends with us. 47 hours later, Princess Zarathel stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching tactical displays that showed the largest military operation she had ever witnessed unfold in real time. The Meridian Nebula stretched across the view screen like a glowing cloud of death, beautiful and terrible in the starlight. Inside that nebula, 47 human civilian vessels waited in perfect formation, each one crewed by a single volunteer who had said goodbye to their families and accepted their fate with the kind of quiet dignity that still made her chest tighten. She had spoken with some of them during the preparation phase, trying to understand the mentality that drove people to volunteer for certain death. "It's not about dying, Your Highness," a mining engineer named Patricia Liu had told her. "It's about making sure the thing that killed billions of peaceful beings never gets the chance to kill billions more. Some prices are worth paying." Now Patricia and 846 others sat in their ships, armed with enough nuclear weapons to crack a small moon, waiting for the Drakari fleet to enter their trap. The princess had never imagined that heroism could feel so much like premeditated murder. "Enemy fleet detected at hyperspace emergence point," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Brooks, the Prometheus's tactical officer. "Drakari formation matches intelligence projections. Confirmed presence of a hive mother." On the main display, the Drakari armada materialized at the edge of the star system like a plague of locusts. 63 bioships of various sizes, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of alien intelligence and malevolent purpose. At the center of the formation lurked the Hive Mother, a massive vessel easily twice the size of any human dreadnought, its surface covered in what appeared to be breeding chambers and weapon pods. Admiral Chen studied the formation with the calm attention of a surgeon examining a patient. "Analysis confirms our intelligence. The Queen Mother is aboard the Hive Mother. All civilian volunteers are in position. Princess, your fleet is standing by as planned." Zarathel checked her personal communicator, confirming the status of the Valari ship's position just outside the nebula. "Confirmed. My people are ready to play their part." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Valari fleet would appear to flee into the nebula, broadcasting false distress signals that suggested they were damaged and seeking shelter in the gas clouds. The Drakari, confident in their superiority and eager to finish off the last organized resistance, would pursue them into the nebula where their sensors would be severely limited. "Initiate Phase 1, Admiral Chen commanded." Across the galaxy, Princess Zarathel's message reached the Valari fleet commander. Within minutes, the surviving ships of the Valari Confederation emerged from hyperspace at the nebula's edge, broadcasting signals that painted a picture of desperate survivors seeking sanctuary. Their formation appeared ragged, their energy signatures fluctuating as if from battle damage. The response was immediate. The Drakari fleet adjusted course toward the nebula, accelerating to intercept what they clearly saw as easy prey. "They're taking the bait," Brooks reported. "Estimated time to nebula entry, 18 minutes. Colonel Kane, standing beside the princess at a secondary console, pulled up internal communications from the civilian ships. "All volunteers report ready. No request for abort." The princess watched the names scroll past on the screen. Engineers, miners, cargo pilots, even a few retired military personnel who had come out of retirement for this one last mission. Each name represented a family that would never see their loved one again, dreams that would never be fulfilled, futures sacrificed for a chance at galactic peace. "How do you live with it?" she asked Kane quietly. "Knowing that your strategies require people to die." Kane's expression remained steady, but she caught a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. "The same way you live with sending soldiers into battle knowing some won't return, Your Highness. You focus on the lives you're saving rather than the ones you're spending. But this is different. These are civilians volunteering for suicide missions." "No," Kane corrected gently. "These are human beings making informed choices about how they want to face an existential threat. The fact that they're not military doesn't make their decision less valid or their sacrifice less meaningful." On the tactical display, the Drakari fleet entered the nebula's outer edge, their bioships immediately spreading out in a hunting formation designed to locate and destroy the fleeing Valari vessels. The princess held her breath as she watched the alien ships move deeper into the trap, their organic sensors adapting to the nebula's interference. "Contact," Brooks announced. "Drakari hunter-killers have detected the outer edge of our civilian formation. They're identifying them as non-military targets and proceeding past them toward the center of the nebula." This was the critical moment. The Drakari tactical doctrine called for ignoring civilian vessels until military threats were neutralized. If their enemies deviated from expected behavior, the entire operation would collapse into chaos. Drakari main force is now fully committed, Brooks continued. All bioships are inside the nebula. Civilian vessels are repositioning to optimal detonation points. Princess Zarathel watched the display with fascination and horror as 847 tiny dots maneuvered through the three-dimensional space around the much larger Drakari bioships. Each dot represented a human being who had chosen to spend their life in service of a greater cause, and the cold efficiency of their movement spoke to a level of coordination that defied belief. "How are they communicating?" she asked. "The nebula should be interfering with their signals." "Quantum entanglement communicators," Kane replied. "Each ship carries a paired particle system. Instantaneous communication regardless of interference. It's expensive, but worth the cost for operations like this." "All civilians in position," Admiral Chen announced. "Princess, would you like to give the order?" The weight of the moment settled on Zarathel's shoulders like a physical burden. With a single command, she would trigger the deaths of nearly 1,000 volunteers and potentially change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. But she thought of her own people, of the billions of beings across dozens of worlds who would die if the Drakari continued their expansion. "Execute," she said quietly. The tactical display erupted in light as 847 nuclear weapons detonated simultaneously throughout the Meridian Nebula. Each explosion created a miniature star for a few seconds, and the combined effect turned the entire gas cloud into a sphere of incandescent destruction. When the radiation cleared enough for sensors to penetrate, the results exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Of the 63 Drakari bioships that had entered the nebula, only 14 remained operational. The others had been vaporized, crippled, or torn apart by the coordinated nuclear barrage. The survivors floated helplessly in the superheated gas, their adaptive armor systems overwhelmed by damage they were never designed to handle. But the Hive Mother endured. Massive and powerful, it had absorbed punishment that would have destroyed any other vessel, and while severely damaged, it remained functional. More importantly, intelligence scans confirmed that the Queen Mother was still alive aboard the vessel. Phase 2. Admiral Chen commanded. All ships engage surviving targets. What followed was less a battle than an execution. The combined human and Valari fleets emerged from hyperspace around the nebula's edge, surrounding the scattered Drakari survivors. The bioships, designed for overwhelming lesser opponents through superior numbers and adaptive technology, proved helpless against coordinated attacks from multiple directions. The princess watched in grim satisfaction as her own people finally had a chance to strike back against their tormentors. Valari energy weapons, normally ineffective against Drakari adaptive armor, found their marks on bioships already weakened by nuclear fire. The aliens who had seemed invincible just hours earlier died like any other living thing when faced with sufficient force. But the real prize remained the Hive Mother. As the other bioships fell around it, the massive vessel attempted to escape the nebula, its Queen Mother apparently unwilling to face death in battle. That's when the human ships revealed their final surprise. Instead of destroying the Hive Mother, they surrounded it with some kind of energy field that prevented it from entering hyperspace. The bioship found itself trapped, unable to flee or fight effectively against the coordinated assault. "Boarding pods away," Kane reported with satisfaction. "Human Marines are preparing to take the Queen Mother alive." Princess Zarathel watched in amazement as small craft detached from the human ships and approached the Hive Mother's hull. These weren't missiles or weapons, they were transport pods carrying human soldiers who intended to board an enemy vessel that was still partially operational and defended by creatures that had conquered half the galaxy. "Are they insane?" she breathed. "They're human," Admiral Chen replied, as if that explained everything, "and they have a job to finish." The boarding operation unfolded with the same efficient brutality that characterized every human military action she had witnessed. The Marines cut through the bioship's hull using some kind of plasma torches, entered the alien vessel through multiple breach points, and began systematically clearing their way toward the Queen Mothers. 3 months after the Battle of Meridian Nebula, Princess Zarathel stood once again on the crystal balcony of the celestial spire, but the view had changed dramatically. instead of the empty purple sky she remembered from before the war. Space around Valorian Prime now bustled with activity from dozens of different species. Ships from across the galaxy had come to witness the trial of the Drakari Queen Mother and to meet the humans who had ended a galactic nightmare. The prisoner herself remained in a specially constructed facility on the planet's surface, isolated in a biocontainment unit that prevented her from communicating with any remaining Drakari forces. According to human intelligence reports, the scattered remnants of the Empire had indeed fragmented exactly as predicted. Some groups had attempted to surrender, others had fled to the galaxy's rim, and a few had simply destroyed themselves rather than face existence without their queen's guidance. But the aftermath of victory had proven almost as complex as the war itself. The galaxy had not simply celebrated humanity's intervention. They had reacted with a mixture of gratitude, terror, and desperate attempts to understand what kind of beings they were now sharing the universe with. "Princess," Nixara announced from behind her, "the Galactic Council delegation has arrived. They're requesting an immediate audience." Zarathel nodded without turning from the view. The Galactic Council represented 47 different species, including some of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space. Their arrival was not unexpected, but their purpose made her deeply uncomfortable. She made her way to the formal audience chamber, where representatives from across the galaxy waited in a carefully arranged circle. At the center of the room stood Admiral Chen and Colonel Kane, their human uniforms looking stark and efficient compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the alien delegates. Council Speaker Mordain of the Ethereal Concordate rose to address the assembly. His species was ancient beyond measure, their crystalline bodies capable of storing memories for millennia. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of civilizations. "Princess Zarathel, Admiral Chen, we have convened this gathering to address the implications of recent events. The destruction of the Drakari Empire has indeed saved countless lives, but it has also demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally alter the galactic balance of power." Admiral Chen stepped forward slightly. "Council Speaker, humanity acted to preserve galactic peace. We have no territorial ambitions and seek only to return to our own systems now that the immediate threat has passed." "That may be your intention, Admiral," replied Councillor Vextha of the Trade Federation, her insectoid features clicking with agitation. "But your methods have raised questions that demand answers. The casualty reports from the Meridian Nebula operation indicate that your species willingly sacrificed nearly 1,000 of your own people in a single coordinated attack. This suggests a level of military fanaticism that concerns many of our member civilizations." Princess Zarathel felt obligated to intervene. "Councillor Vextha, with respect, those volunteers chose their fate to save billions of lives across dozens of worlds. Their sacrifice deserves honor, not condemnation." "We do not question their honor, Princess," Mordain replied carefully. "We question the implications of a species that can coordinate such sacrifices with apparent ease. Intelligence reports suggest that humanity received over 10,000 additional volunteers for similar missions during the planning phase. This level of dedication is unprecedented in galactic history." Colonel Kane's expression remained neutral, but Zarathel had learned to read human body language well enough to detect his amusement. "Council Speaker, are you suggesting that having citizens willing to defend their communities is somehow problematic?" "We are suggesting," interjected Councillor Zalketh of the Scientific Collective, "that your species represents a potential threat that rivals the one you just eliminated. Your technological capabilities, combined with your apparent willingness to accept massive casualties to achieve strategic objectives, makes you potentially more dangerous than the Drakari ever were." The chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement settled over the assembly. Princess Zarathel realized that this moment had been inevitable from the moment humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The same capabilities that had saved her people now made other species question whether they had simply traded one existential threat for another. Admiral Chen's response was measured and calm. "Counselors, I understand your concerns. From your perspective, humanity must seem like an unknown variable that could destabilize everything you've built, but I would like to offer some perspective on our motivations and limitations." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing star charts of human space. Humanity currently controls 17 star systems within a sphere roughly 50 light-years in diameter. Our total population is approximately 40 billion individuals. By galactic standards, we are a minor power with limited territorial interests. But your military capabilities far exceed your size, Counselor Vextha pointed out. Because we had to develop them, Kane replied. Every species in this room developed on worlds that allowed them to evolve peacefully until they reached spaceflight. Humanity evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us for millions of years. We didn't choose to become warriors, we were shaped by necessity. Morden's crystalline form pulsed thoughtfully. Yet you could choose to use those capabilities for conquest. What guarantees can you provide that humanity will not become the next galactic threat? Admiral Chen exchanged a glance with Kane before responding. Council Speaker, I could offer you treaties, non-aggression pacts, and formal guarantees. But those would be meaningless if we truly intended conquest. Instead, let me offer you something more valuable: transparency. She gestured again, and the holographic display shifted to show detailed specifications for human military technology. Princess Zarathel gasped as she recognized weapon systems, ship designs, and tactical doctrines that the humans had kept classified during their joint operations. These are complete technical specifications for our primary military systems, Admiral Chen continued. Production capabilities, resource requirements, deployment strategies, and defensive countermeasures. We're providing this information freely to all Council member species. The alien delegates buzzed with conversation as they absorbed the implications. By revealing their military capabilities, the humans were either demonstrating unprecedented trust or making an incredibly sophisticated strategic move. Why? Counselor Zalketh asked bluntly. Why reveal information that could be used against you? Kane smiled, and for the first time since she had known him, Princess Zarathel saw genuine warmth in the expression. Because the galaxy is full of species like yours, peaceful, curious, dedicated to growth and understanding. We don't want you to fear us. We want you to understand us. And because, Admiral Chen added, we've learned something important from our interaction with Princess Zarathel and her people. Humanity has spent so long focused on survival that we've forgotten how to build instead of destroy. We need allies who can teach us about diplomacy, art, philosophy, and all the things we never had time to develop properly. Mordane's ancient voice carried new interest. You're proposing a mutual exchange of knowledge and capabilities? We're proposing friendship, Kane said simply. Humanity will gladly serve as the galaxy's protectors against existential threats like the Drakari. In return, we'd like to learn from civilizations that know how to build beautiful things instead of just effective ones. Princess Zarathel stood, feeling the weight of this moment in galactic history. Council members, I have worked alongside these humans for months now. I have seen their capacity for violence, yes, but I have also seen their dedication to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. They could have left us to face the Drakari alone. They could have demanded tribute or territory in exchange for their aid. Instead, they asked only for our trust and offered their lives to save worlds they had never seen. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from across the galaxy. Humanity is not perfect. They are capable of terrible things when threatened, but they are also capable of incredible sacrifice when justice demands it. The question before us is not whether they are dangerous. All truly powerful beings are dangerous. The question is whether they will use their power for good or evil. I believe their actions have already answered that question. Counselor Vextha clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Princess, you speak with conviction. But how can we be certain that humanity will not change? Power has corrupted many species throughout galactic history. Colonel Kane stepped forward. Because we know our own nature, Counselor. We're predators who learn to cooperate. Left to ourselves, we'll always be looking for the next threat to prepare against. But surrounded by friends and allies who need our protection, we have a purpose that's bigger than conquest. We become guardians instead of warriors. The debate continued for hours, but gradually consensus began to emerge. The galaxy would accept humanity as an equal member of the galactic community, with the understanding that they would serve as a defensive force against existential threats.